So, okay. Let me just check my agenda. All right. So first up, public comment. I don't know if anybody has any comments. I think Mr. Carroll is now a member of the public, so I don't know if he has anything to say. Going once, going twice. All right, we'll move on. Next up is approval of the minutes from our last meeting in May. I looked over the minutes. They look good to me. I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions on the minutes. All right, if not, I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes.
I wrote them. Someone else is going to have to do that.
Looks like Barbara is making the motion. I'll second the motion. And then I'll do a roll call vote. Barbara? That looks like a yes to me. Matt? All right. That sounds like a yes to me. I'll accept that as a yes. Ken?
Yes.
And I'll also vote yes. Okay. Next up, so this is our first meeting since our reappointments to the committee. And so we should be electing committee officers, chair, vice chair, and secretary. And at the last meeting, I indicated a preference for stepping aside as chair. I can't say I've been deluged with interest in it, but I'll throw it out there and to see if anyone has interest or would like to nominate somebody for the position. All right. Well, what I'm going to suggest then is that I'd be willing to accept a 6-month appointment as chair, but I've been doing this for 7 years, and it's not my desire to do it for another 7 years. So, if I don't know how the committee feels, if anyone has any comments. We have a couple of new members. I think we have one vacancy that I'm hoping to see if we can find somebody to fill. I think Ken and I are the last original members from the committee, and it's good to have fresh blood. And I think I'll be out looking to see if we can find somebody to fill the committee, and then maybe at that point we can find a new chair. But I don't know if anyone has any comments or thoughts on just the committee makeup going forward. So I'll throw that out there.
David, thank you for being willing to do it for more months. I know you wanted to be done at this point, but I don't hear a resounding message from the committee that anybody else is interested in. I've explained that I believe I have a conflict in that regard. So I would like to nominate David McPherson as chair for a 6-month term.
Yep. I second it.
Okay. I'm waiting for the day that there's a no confidence vote. I'd welcome one. Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Ken,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Matt.
Yes.
Okay, we got that one, and I'll reluctantly vote yes as well. The secretary's position has been filled by Ken for an equally long time. I don't know if there's any interest in anyone else serving in that role.
It's a rigorous job. You just have to take the minutes whenever you have a meeting. That's it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if David's going to do it for 6 more months, the least I can do is volunteer again in the face of deafening silence.
I'll nominate Ken.
Second.
All right, I'll do a roll call. Barbara,
Yep.
Matt,
Yes.
I'll vote yes, and Ken?
I think I have to abstain.
I didn't abstain for myself.
Fine, yes, I can hardly wait to do it.
Okay. In all seriousness, I actually think we're kind of at an important time, so that's why I think another 6 months I'm okay with, but I do think a fresh perspective is helpful, and so I know I'll be doing some lobbying as well as trying to locate some new members. All right, phase one update. I'm sure we have a lot to talk about there, and I'm gonna turn that over to Tim, and I'm sure Marlene probably has some thoughts and comments as well. So Tim, why don't you just start with give us an update where we stand with Route 1, phase one. I know there's an advertising date coming up and so forth. So take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we originally had an advertisement date of August 2nd. That was decided sometime late winter, spring, pushed back from a June advertisement date. That has since been pushed back to August 30th. And I'm starting to realize that tip projects get a lot of attention very close to the advertisement date. You look to connect with them, and then towards the end, it really heats up. So I was very eager to give you this update because we've had a lot of movement. Starting with the first point I'd like to show is the phase one terminus. Now, see if I can just move it over. I just want to zoom in slightly. So we had met with Gray Gables back in September prior to the fall town meeting. We were looking to clear the easements. We got a positive vote for that. But if you guys remember, when we talked to the Gray Gables neighborhood, they were very concerned with this phase, basically, essentially using their words, dumping people out into the neighborhood where there was no bike facilities yet. That being said, we had kind of said, okay, well, we'll make changes. And we had already had a conceptual plan from VHB to do a roundabout. So we made that roundabout. We made that change. We basically curved away from the railroad right-of-way and curled right into the Stackpole Park. So as you can see, this angle going up to the top left, where the cul-de-sac, I call it the roundabout, now lies, was the result of the change from comments that we had from the community, as well as other, drainage issues that we might have saw had we kept the crossing at Monument Neck. Also, they wanted us to create a crossing to phase two based on the fact that it came out there. So it all kind of worked out for us to have this little cul-de-sac. Flash forward to 2 months ago or a month and a half ago, the Complete Streets Division made a very important comment here that they can't have the terminus of a trail like this without having access from the neighborhood, which in hindsight, it makes complete sense. They're not going to support a project with all the ADA initiatives and things like that we all support and not allow access, formal ADA access into this pathway. So that being said, there was a lot of changes that VHB had made to try to satisfy the comment. So what they ended up doing is basically creating a fork in the road where the path diverged. Now, can you guys see my mouse cursor on the screen when I do that?
Yep.
So right where the path deviates and starts to curl up into Stackpole, they were going to break the path off to come down through the railroad right-of-way and then curl up and create another 10-foot path. This was just going to be completely grammed into this section, and this portion of the path with the cul-de-sac was going to be moved up into the area where the decorative pump is, where there's some trees that already exist. So right now we're not taking any trees out. We're not moving any decorative pumps. We're not moving the rock. There's a time capsule there that we're not moving. So it just caused a lot of problems for me because we weren't looking for that amount of impervious surface. We weren't looking for another path to end there. We weren't looking for the outlet. So working with VHB and working with Joe Yu, who's our phase one project manager for DOT projects, we kind of came to the agreement that if we have to satisfy this comment, what's the minimum size that we can accept? So in speaking with the Complete Streets folks, we came to add this little spur, which is 8 feet wide, as a temporary treatment. So that being said, is that we would change this little terminus when phase two was to come online. But it also goes against what I'm on the record as saying to the Gray Gables community, as well as VHB and a few of us in this committee, is saying that we wouldn't have like a path outlet on this area. So what I want first is to maybe have some discussion if this is satisfies our mission and what we're trying to do in order to have this be in the next revision with DOT for phase one.
I have a question, Tim. I want to make sure I understand what I'm looking at. So there's still going to be like a roundabout, correct?
Yes, so
Okay.
that is still going to exist as like a station.
Okay, so it's a roundabout that would kind of encourage people to go back the other way, but there's still almost like an exit off the roundabout if people want to go that way, or if somebody from Gray Gables were heading toward the canal. Is that right?
Right, and then prior to this revision, this little sidewalk that goes into the picnic table and benches,
Yeah.
this continued across to a southwest to this sidewalk here. So it was a 5 foot sidewalk that was already there. We're just making that now an 8 foot wide temporary treatment that gets us to the sidewalk that we're improving on President's Road.
So we went from like a 5 foot sidewalk, so to speak, to an 8 foot one.
Correct.
Okay. And that you call temporary treatment, is that paved? Is that gravel? Is
That's
there an
paved.
option? That's paved, okay. And I'm going to ask one last question and then open it up. Is it basically essential to meet ADA requirements? Is that it?
Yes.
That's all I have. I don't know if anyone else has comments or questions. Barbara, you know the area best, so I like to hear what your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, is that where the rock is? Looks like it's right where the time capsule and the Grover Cleveland rock is.
Yep, you can see the monument right here with in my cursor.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. So it looks like you moved the whole turn roundabout further in
Well,
from,
this was the original placement that we had it in the last revision that we saw in the fall, going back to last September.
oh. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay.
You know, you can see what the tree line is here that exists.
Yeah, I see it now. Yep.
You know, that'll be augmented.
Mm-hmm. So it'll be an 8 foot path from that roundabout into President's Road.
Correct, from here, from
Yeah.
the cursor.
What's the width of the other portion of the path? Is it 12 or 10?
It's 10.
It's 10. Okay, so all right, so a little bit more narrow.
Mm-hmm. And it looks like there's a sidewalk that would start to the left, like going onto Monument Road.
Yeah, so that's a gap for us. Right now, the sidewalk ends at the railroad, and it was kind of a makeshift improvement when the water line went in that area back in 2019.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so how do you tell everyone about the changes? Do you have a meeting or?
So our advertisement date is August 30th, and I wanted to get this to you as soon as possible. This was the soonest meeting that we had had. So I don't know if we're going to have time to really inform the community about this change.
Hmm.
Um, and I don't know how we would go about to build consensus in the Gray Gables community in the meantime.
Hmm. And it's the law, ADH regulations they're saying you have to do it.
Well, yeah, the Complete Streets goal is to, meet all of those qualifiers. ADA is obviously a very, very important part of it. And it just wouldn't make sense. And I just really wish I wasn't on the record saying,
Hmm.
yeah, we can fix this. It's just there has to be some sort of outlet. But after I reviewed what we were saying and what we were doing, we're going from a 5 foot sidewalk to an 8 foot temporary path.
Yeah.
And we still have the roundabout as being some sort of formal stop point for people to stop. And I think we can control things with signage just to let people know that there's no real bicycle accommodation outlet in that neighborhood.
Hmm. And well, again, Gray Gables, their main problem was safety and signage and things like that. So I don't know if this changes anything.
So
You know.
yeah. So while we think about that as well,
Mhm.
the other thing I wanted to bring to your attention is back in September, this was a $4.4 million project.
Mhm.
By the time we had wrapped up town meeting and we had some other discussions with some of the changes that we were doing with this concept plan, it became a $7 million project by December. So to go from a $4.4 million project to a $7 million project was a big jump. And it basically came down to some refined cost analysis. So it really wasn't too much of a scope change at that point. It was really just somebody sharpening the pencil. And then as of the end of May into June, it became a $9.3 million project and required a tip amendment in June from the MPO, the Cape Cod MPO, which is um, our countywide group that votes on our tip projects for our region. We get about $11 million a year for that. So they made the amendment. They normally don't even meet in June. They called a meeting in June. I don't want to say it was just for this project, but this was the only project they voted on. There was some other topics. And then since then, we voted for that. They had the comment period that came and went. I don't think there was any comments. I'm not sure about that. Please don't quote me. But we were supposed to come back in July for another amendment because it's now a $10.1 million project. So I just felt like that was also important for me to tell you guys and communicate that. So from what I understand, there was supposed to be an MPO meeting in July. I had checked 2 weeks ago. I didn't see an agenda. I hadn't checked since. I just checked earlier today. I didn't see any information for a past July meeting.
I, I get their meeting notices, and I believe I received a notice saying that they canceled their July meeting.
Yeah, so it remained canceled. Typically the June, July, and August MPO and JTC meetings they don't have them during the summer.
Um, I got
So
some questions.
for the half a mile of the project with, these few changes, it's a $10.1 million project.
Tim, are we done with this diagram? Can we go back to the screen of people?
Yes.
I'm speechless. $10.1 million for a half a mile of a trail to nowhere.
So I have a question, Tim. My understanding, or let me ask you the question, how much of that is specifically for railroad related improvements?
So
Because I know that along the way, the rail division has had a lot of requests and I don't know if I call them demands, but
accommodations.
accommodations, yeah. And um, it's my belief that a lot of what they're asking for is what led to a substantial price increase? I don't know if you have a breakdown or any insight on that.
So it's really hard for me to like really separate, the railroad stuff and the path stuff. But with a rail with trail project, you're going to see the railroad need accommodations in that regard. So I will preface what I'm about to say with that. When I tried to break it down to say like they have an access road going for the entire half mile, that's pretty significant. It's 12 inches of ballast, which is a significant foundation for an access road that isn't used daily with the design loads that they're using. It's somewhere in the ballpark of 1.5 to 1.7 million for like the gates, the access road, things like that. So it's in the 1.7 million dollar range. The other significant increase was the fact that we're going to be trucking potentially contaminated soil and unclassified soil off of the site. So phase one, I don't know if it's been talked about too much, but there is a significant cut up by Bell Road. When you come from Bell Road to that marsh, there's like a little bit of high shoulders. So we're going to be doing a cut there. And the idea is that we could carry that cut to the fill locations on section two, on phase two. But because phase two isn't going to continue, phase one has this bulk of dirt that really didn't find a home in the budget until we realized that, it's time to refine the budget. So there's a cost there, and that's somewhere in the ballpark of almost $2 million. So, if this was a real two trail project, I don't even know if I want to really, get into that, but it's due to the cut of the soils for the slopes. So all in all, 1.7 million for the railroad accommodation specifically, almost $2 million for the soil being shipped, whether it's in state or out of state. There's a couple classifications there, but it's like $800,000 out of state, 500,000 in state, 300,000 other, moving it elsewhere up and down the site.
Okay. Mhm. So, so advertising, so the, they amended the tip to accommodate, the bulk of these increases, it sounds like.
Yeah, but we still appear short. I could be wrong, but everything I understand, we're about 800,000 short.
Okay. Um, is there any reason that the advertising would not go forward on August 30th, or is that all kind of full steam ahead?
So I wish I asked my project manager this question last week, but everything's moving for the final revision to be submitted on Monday, the 28th. And right of way would send out notifications to our easement holders. And then there'd be a 30-day period where we would have a select board meeting to vote those easements in. So it appears that we're still moving forward to that August 30th date. I haven't heard otherwise.
Okay. Are there other committee members who have questions or comments? Barbara?
So with the difference in the money, does the town just is supposed to pick that up? For our taxes, or how does it get paid for?
I mean, it's a regionally significant project, and
Yeah.
it's funded with state tip money.
Yeah.
It's still a significant amount of state tax dollars. There is some federal money involved in that. We've been kind of keeping an eye on the federal administration's cuts to bicycle projects specifically. We haven't bared that, yet.
So we don't know how much that the town would have to pay?
We typically aren't going to pay any money for the tip project for the construction. The idea is that we paid for the engineering. And I'm pretty sure our engineering is reflective of the cost of a $10 million project.
So the state, must have the money and are willing to spend it, I'm sure if the town were required to spend that, it'd be
Right.
it'd be a whole different discussion. But so Marlene, I don't know, do you have anything you want to, or actually, hold on, let me just go to Matt. Matt just raised his hand and then I'll go to the town administrator. Matt?
Okay, yeah, sorry. Thank you, David. Yeah, I think a couple of concerns here that started when we were talking about changing plans after socializing them to the Gray Gables community, and like you were saying, Tim, going on record even about the state of the project in their neighborhood, and then now with the relative explosion in costs for phase one. I'm concerned that we wind up with a sort of first tranche of this project that is either materially or perceived as, something that isn't what was represented to the community. And also, well, in two ways. One, to the Gray Gables community when we solicited their feedback, and understanding, did our best to incorporate that feedback, but also at town meeting, understanding that if the state picks up the delta because it is a TIP project, that it's different than if this were, going to be going into the tax rate. But I'm just concerned that we wind up with what would otherwise be sort of a first, overall victory, right? Because it'd be the first time of moving dirt on this project. And instead we wind up mired in, we're doing something that isn't what we told the community. And also, forget the rest of the path. A half mile is going to cost 10 mil.
Okay. Marlene?
Thank you. So I definitely share the concerns that have been expressed by the committee. I'm disappointed that the comments from Complete Streets are so late in the process. I am also afraid that this could certainly be perceived as, not intentionally, but perceived as a bait and switch, because we were pretty clear that, we understood that they don't want this outlet. So I am concerned about that happening so late in the process. And, the full disclosure around the cost of this, I don't think anybody was anticipating that we would be spending $10 million on a half a mile. And I don't want people to be, I think that could catch people off guard and surprise people. It is, granted, it is not local money. It is not raised and appropriated by the town of Bourne, but it is, it is public money. It is a resource, and I think that does deserve some conversation. It is the state's money. As Tim noted, there's a significant amount of money going towards investments into the railroad. And I think we have to be aware that if this project is investing kind of at that scale into the railroad, it could potentially, this is a potential, it's not guaranteed, but it could potentially be more difficult to argue that the railroad should stop operating south of here once these types of investments are made in the railroad. And I will say kind of what is giving me the biggest pause, and I think where I'd like to hear from the committee is we do not have a clear path forward for the remaining phases. We don't know what the plan is for 2, 3, and 4. I don't feel like we're in the position of making any promises as to when or if this path could possibly be continued. So, is there, are people going to be unhappy with the result if phase one is the end for a significant amount of time. So I'm not going to say it'll never be extended, but hypothetically, if this is the terminus for the next 20 years, is that a good result for the community? And I don't know the answer to that question. It's not what we want to be that's not what we want, but I'm very uncomfortable saying that we've got any other position to say is likely to happen. Thank you.
I actually have some thoughts on that, but I want to see if anyone else wants to chime in first. Barbara?
Yeah, I think that people should know all that, just so it doesn't look like a bait and switch. I think they should know the cost. They should know that it might be a long time before phase 2 and 3 are done. Just to be honest.
So, Ken, go ahead.
You know, I'm not going to pretend that I've been excited about this this route to creating the Bourne Rail Trail. But I think a $10.1 million price tag is absolutely indefensible for a half a mile of this trail. We've been talking about this rail with trail project costing $80 million. That's clearly way low if 1/2 mile is going to cost $10 million. It also, I don't think was contemplated, although maybe we were naive, that over $3 million would be used to improve the track. And I think, as Marlene said, if that money goes into improving the track, the argument that we should remove the track to do the rest of the project, I think, becomes extremely difficult. At the same time that I think everybody who's looked at this project with any real wide open eyes and realistic view knows that there's no way we can build phases 2, 3, and 4 as rail with trail. And we found that out, just from the fact that DOT did a walk through of phase 3 and Katomet neighborhood went nuts about it. So, I just think that this is a doomed project. I know that's strong statement, but I don't see any justification, with apologies, especially to Tim, who's worked so hard on this. I don't see any justification for going forward with this phase. I can't see it. I think, as everybody's identified, we're going to have problems with the Gray Gables neighborhood. They're going to feel like we weren't straightforward. And even if they say, okay, we understand it's an ADA thing.
Will I bother you if I work on the floor down here for a little bit?
Not at all.
Okay, sorry.
Well, it doesn't matter because it's just, the screen lights itself.
Oh, okay.
I'm doing a Zoom meeting with
John, can you mute, please?
I just muted him.
Okay. So, I don't want to be dramatic about this, you guys, but, I just don't see how we can support a project that's going to cost $10 million for half a mile that's going to end in the neighborhood where people are going to be unhappy with the terminus and where we have absolutely no ability to assure anybody that they're ever going to see it go any farther. So my opinion is we should pull the plug on this.
Matt?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Ken here on the themes of, I think that we had a very earnest justification to the Gray Gables community that this was a temporary terminus and it was part of a greater project. And while met with apprehension, there was also some support there. Of course, reiterating my earlier point that I think any changes should be able to be socialized with the community there. My concern is that if there is a real potential that the terminus for phase one is a maybe not to say permanent, but long time scale feature of the project overall, or winds up just being, for 20 years what it is. I worry that the Gray Gables community, from what was represented, at least how I heard it at the information session, they haven't been coming to us wanting this path to happen, that there's good justification for it as part of a larger program. But I'm very concerned that if this did wind up being a quasi stable state of the project to just finish phase one, that we will have driven bulldozers over a park that is very important to that neighborhood for an amenity that folks outside of that neighborhood thought was good for them. So I think, particularly with the points that have been raised here, I'm very concerned about community buy-in of the Gray Gables neighborhood. Thank you.
So I get several thoughts. So first off, with respect to, notifying the public, I think we should, whether it's a public meeting or do something along those lines so that we can show what the plans are. I feel like a lot of ways our hands are tied, that, we're advocating for the project, but really it's the state that's in control. And it's they who are, raising the price tag. It's not us. I am not going to walk away from a project that I've spent 7 years devoting a lot of personal time on. I'm not going to walk away at the last minute because of it. And the question I think the committee has to confront is, what do we do if the state refuses to pull up the tracks? I'm very pessimistic that that's ever going to happen. We made that request 2.5 years ago. Nothing has happened. I am very, it's being opposed intently by other people. I worry that we're falling into the trap of the rail advocates. Let's raise the price on this project as high as we can, and we'll kill public support by doing so. And if we walk away, we're falling into their trap. Projects like this are never built all at once. They are always done at phases. And, example number one is the Mattapoisett Bike Trail, which has been, in the works for some 20 years, is partially complete, and the portion that is done is absolutely gorgeous. Yes, $10 million is a lot of money. And I certainly would not ask, Bourne residents to pick up that cost, particularly when we're not the ones that keep raising the price. But if the state is willing to allocate that money, or feels they have the money to, then so be it. I have said from day one, and I continue to believe, that building this phase is crucial to build momentum to complete it, including removal of the track. I've kind of been thinking about, okay, what would be the next step after this? And, how do we, and I have some thoughts on that, but it might be premature. But I think walking away at this point would be a serious, serious mistake. The state would not be willing to allocate this amount of money if they were not interested in getting the project done somehow. I think we need to be more creative in terms of Gray Gables residents. I've spoken, I can't say I've canvassed the neighborhood because I have not, but I have spoken to some residents of that area who told me they're very excited by phase one because it's going to make it easier for them to walk and bike and to run to the canal, specifically from their neighborhood. And so I don't think it's a lot of money, but it's not ill spent. And just to put this project into comparison, $10 million to us is a lot of money. Of course it is. Um, there's a bike bridge being proposed in the Boston area to connect to the Encore Casino area where there's a bike path. That's in the planning phases right now that the state is recently announced they're going to try to get done in the next 3 years. And right now that's on the tip in that part of the state for about $62 million for a bridge. So if the Boston area is going to get a bridge for $62 million, I don't feel badly about Bourne getting $10 million to kick off the project, which, you know, will happen. So I just the question I think the committee has to answer is, if the state's not going to pull up the tracks, what are we going to do? Because after 2.5 years, I'm sorry, Ken, it's not happening. Ken?
David, I respect you, but I couldn't disagree more. I think you are so wrong on so many fronts in this. For one thing, it is not true that we have no chance of getting the track pulled up. In fact, I think in some ways we have a better chance now than we've had in the last 5 years of that happening. I think that there's, of course, there's still opposition, but a lot of the opposition has either melted away or is reconsidering their position. I think that if we spend this kind of money on the first phase, we will never have an argument for pulling up the track again. I don't even know if we can make the argument in good conscience after we've spent $3.5 million improving a portion of the track. I also disagree that it's somehow okay to spend $10 million of taxpayer money because it's not Bourne taxpayer money. Of course, it's partly Bourne taxpayer money because we pay taxes to the state. I think you have to step back and say, can we justify $10 million for a half-a-mile track that's not going anywhere? And I don't know anybody who has spent time on this project, and I've been involved since 2017. I don't know anybody who thinks it's realistic that we're going to be able to build rail with trail the entire way. So we better, if we're going to go out to the public, we better be really honest about the fact that they're probably only going to see phase one. And I just think it's kind of naive of us to think that we're going to spend this $10 million and then everybody's going to go, great, let's build the rest of it. At which point they're going to be told, okay, well, the only way that can happen is years of takings and litigation over takings, millions and millions of dollars to take the property we need to build it along the rail line, at the end of which you're going to have a fence that is going to separate the majority of the community of the town of Bourne from the people who live on the coast. I just don't see that ever happening. And yes, there is a risk that the governor will not approve removal of the track. I think that is a much more likely outcome, particularly if the town communicates to the governor's office that we don't want this trail as a rail with trail, that we can't justify it, and that the expense isn't merited. I think we have a much better chance of getting the governor to approve pulling up the track, because the fact is that there really aren't good arguments for keeping the track. There really aren't. And those arguments get a lot weaker when you're spending $100 million to do this project. So I'm really strongly in favor of us passing a motion tonight to say that we want to communicate to the governor's office that we don't want this project. And I assure you that will generate activity because the transit division is, on board to advertise really soon. I mean, this project's going to move forward unless we say something to indicate that we're not happy with the outcome.
I think the committee has to confront the question. I disagree with many of your points, Ken, but regardless, I think we have to confront the question is, okay, what happens? What are we going to do if the governor says, no, we're not pulling up the tracks? And I see no evidence after 2.5 years that it's going to happen.
David, listen, I apologize for this, but you're not as involved in that aspect of this project. And what I'm at liberty to say is that there has been a lot of activity and a lot of effort ongoing to convince the governor to pull the track. And if you notice, there hasn't been a decision because she delegated it to the lieutenant governor, and the lieutenant governor is still considering it. And you're right, if we make this move and then the governor decides not pulling up the track, then we're not going to have this project. But we're not going to have this project anyway. We're going to have a half a mile to nowhere. We're never going to have a rail with trail 6.5 miles. It's not going to happen.
Matt, you had your hand raised?
Thank you, David. Yeah, I think just to make my position clear, I think as I showed up in 2022, whenever the Katama information session was, that I think that if the final decision does come down that the tracks are not getting pulled, then I feel that it would be appropriate to pivot. And this committee has discussed a couple strategies, potential for putting our efforts behind how a new modern line could be worked into the bridges project on the east side of MacArthur Boulevard. I think that, and just to sort of put my cards on the table, that a rail with trail along the Falmouth secondary line through Bourne and all of the impacts that we've discussed with that is untenable from my point of view. So I think that we ought to consider, I think we should consider that starting this project with a third of its initial costs going to improving the railroad that we're saying is obsolete takes much of our positioning to be able to say that it's an obsolete asset. If we were to sign up for those improvements, even if tacitly, because they're on the same funding for our project. And I think it removes us from a clear message, but also a clear purpose for something that I think in my mind would ultimately be untenable. To say that is rail with trail would be untenable. So thank you.
Well, actually, one thing I should maybe state the obvious. It kind of falls outside of our hands because we're an advisory committee, and it's ultimately, I think, the town administrator and the select board. It's honestly up to them. Ken?
David, I think you're exactly right. We are an advisory committee. And maybe to move this conversation along, I'm going to propose a motion that we advise the town administrator that it's this committee's recommendation that she communicate to the Department of Transportation and the governor's office that we do not support continuing with this rail with trail project for phase 1. So I've made that motion. If there's a second, otherwise, obviously, motion doesn't go forward.
Sorry, I'm not, I guess, entirely up on my parliamentary rules. Before giving a second, can I ask a clarifying question, please?
Sure.
Ken, is there an alternative that you proposed, right? So language you used earlier was pulling the plug. Is there a potential path forward that you see that you would perhaps include with the language of your motion to not proceed with phase 1 as currently planned to go out for advertisement.
Yeah, I think the answer to that is that our recommendation to the town administrator should be the project goes forward with removal of the track. That obviously requires the governor's agreement. And that can be accomplished a lot of ways. And one of the ways that's been on the table for a while is that if it's felt by the military in particular, because they have all the funding, if it's felt that a new track is needed, then that new track should be built inland away from environmental areas, perhaps as part of the new bridge project. So I see a lot of ways forward, but they require removing the Falmouth secondary. So yeah, I mean, to the extent that I would be inclined to revise the motion, I'd say we should advise the town administrator that it's our opinion that we should communicate to the governor's office and to the Department of Transportation that we are not interested in proceeding with this phase as rail with trail, that we would like the Falmouth secondary removed, and if it's deemed necessary by the military or the Upper Cape towns that a rail line is needed, that one be built as part of the bridge project in the inland areas away from environmentally sensitive coastal areas. Now you've made my motion much more complicated, John.
Yes, I would second that motion with language included specific to developments with track spending, such that the inclusion of the access road, etc. That the opinion of the committee to the town administrator is such.
I have a procedural thought, and I don't really have a strong. Okay, Marlene, looks like you have your hand raised.
So I do have a question. And as part of the communication, is the recommendation that we quote unquote pull the plug on the project, or that we ask DOT to delay the advertising date? Because I think that there is a difference there because if we ask them to essentially abandon the project, then I'm not familiar enough with their procedures to know, does that mean that we would essentially have to start over from the very beginning? Because if the intention here is to, and I think, Tim, you said that notice for the easements might go out on Monday. So I think if the intention here is that we want to send if the committee wants to send the message that the project should only be built as rail to trail for the entire length, including phase 1, then we may want to ask them not to advertise for the September 30th, I don't want to essentially make us start over where we have to kind of refile with a new project number and start the design over. So I think there might be a difference between asking them to delay advertising and asking them to abandon the project.
Ken?
Yeah, Marlene, that you raise a really good point. I mean, obviously, it's not my intention to either to chase the Department of Transportation away. It's more to send the message that we think this ought to be rethought if we're not pulling the track. So I'm happy to amend the motion to suggest that we advise you to let them know we want the publication date delayed, but as long as we explain to them what our reasons for that are. Matt, I don't know if you need to second that again on a revised
Uh,
motion.
Yeah, I can if we think we need it. Yeah, I think those are great comments, Marlene, and a point well taken. That I think delaying the advertising date makes a lot of sense, and perhaps also gives the opportunity to socialize changes as presented from VHB and Tim to the Gray Gables community. So seconded.
I have a question about the tip. Do we lose a place on the tip? Do we get pushed back? I mean, I think as it is right now, what would be let's say we, ask them to delay advertising, what impact does that have on our placement on the tip?
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
So the one thing I do understand is the money for the federal dollars needs to be committed in September because that is their deadline. So I was almost kind of not sure how to word that because I'm not sure how it gets committed because it still doesn't get spent, until the following year. But I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I just know September is a deadline for the federal money.
Is the federal money part of the tip money, Tim?
For this project.
Yes. So if I don't want to speak kind of too strongly here, but it's my understanding that with the new federal fiscal year, so October 1st starts the new federal fiscal year. It's my understanding that if the project is not advertised before then, and the advertising date is kind of that commitment. So I think it is possible that if the project is not advertised by the end of September, that then essentially it becomes unfunded. So while it's funded on this current federal fiscal year's budget, if we cross the date into October, it would lose its status as funded in the fiscal year. That doesn't mean it can't get put back on the tip, but that tip process, I think, would start over.
But is it all 10 million that's federal funding, or is it just a part of it?
I do believe it's a part of it, but I don't know what the breakdown is.
Okay, so we don't know how much we're risking
Yeah.
in federal funding.
Tim, is the federal money the CMAQ money?
I believe so.
Okay.
So I'm wondering do we have to take a vote on this tonight? I mean, partly what I've been wondering is, given the importance of the discussion, I'd like to have MJ's input. And she couldn't be here tonight. Is there any benefit to delaying any action one way or the other till maybe, I don't know, 2 weeks or further? And as Marlene, I see a hand raised. I also believe, and I could be wrong, that I thought MJ had said that the project was going to be discussed at the July 29 select board meeting. And I don't know if that's true or not, but Marlene, why don't you address? Yeah.
So for the first point, I think that if there's value to not voting tonight, if there's value to not voting tonight, it may be valuable if you have the opportunity or the desire to talk to Gray Gables. I don't know if the committee feels that it would be a worthwhile use of your time to take the new terminus plan and try to get some neighborhood feedback before you make these decisions. And as far as the scheduling, this was, the easements were scheduled for select board vote on August 5th. We had it penciled in for August 5th, but that won't allow the 30 days notice time now. So the item for the select board is accepting the easements. And if we move forward with, we have a little bit of a chicken and egg here, right? So if we move forward with the advertising, DOT sends out the notice to the people who are going to be impacted by the easements, and then 30 days has to pass, and then the select board can vote to take those easements. But those easement notices won't get sent out if the project isn't going to be moving forward.
So I'm what I'm wondering is, should we try to have some type of Zoom meeting to show folks what the changes were in terms of the terminus? You know, Barbara, I don't know if you have thoughts on that, and how quickly we can turn it around. I'm going to be, you know, like next Wednesday be logical, but I'm going to be away for business. I could potentially do it the following Wednesday, I think, which is August 6th, and then I'm leaving the country for 2 weeks. But I mean, I think having a Zoom meeting, we can pull that together very, very quickly. And just see what, you know, people say. So that's my first thought is, you know, maybe we try to do that meeting and see what type of feedback we get from people. Barbara? We can't hear you, Barbara.
Sorry about that. Can it be in person in Gray Gables or at the library or something like that?
I mean, yeah, potentially if we can find a venue.
For August 6th?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have necessarily be that date. I'm just throwing it out there. Usually we have our meetings on Wednesdays, but it's not. But I know from experience, other nights we tend to run into conflicts. Next Wednesday is absolutely out for me, and then the last 2 weeks, the following 2 weeks are out for me. Not that I have to run the meeting, particularly if it's to present the plans. I mean, I would expect Tim would have to do a lot of the talking.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, is there value in just, you know, that approach? I'm not trying to drag things out. I've got a pretty busy month, so I don't necessarily need a lot of meetings, but it seems to have some value to do it that way. Ken?
Well, I guess my concern is, so let's say we have this meeting and the Gray Gables people say, okay, we understand you have to have an outlet and, you know, we're fine with this. Are we still going forward with building a half a mile for $10 million with no expectation of doing the rest of it? I mean, is that going to change our mind?
Barbara?
Yeah, I mean, the price went up to 10 million, but I mean, so has everything else, and the price of houses are $1 million plus 2 million. So yeah, I would do it. And even a meeting with Gray Gables next week or whenever Tim would be available to show the drawings.
Matt?
Yeah, David, I think I'm supportive of both of these ideas. I think that it would be good to get the changes in front of Gray Gables. Regardless, I sort of view them as two separate issues. And I like your point about getting MJ the opportunity to weigh in on this as well, right? Because I think it is a reasonably big policy stance for the committee to take, and she was planning to be here tonight.
Yeah, and I mean, I think no matter what your view is, I think having some time to reflect upon an important vote is not a bad thing. Marlene?
I think the other really important piece to talk to the neighborhood about is not only design of this proposed terminus, but the larger question of if the trail does not continue either ever or for, you know, an extended an extended amount of time, how does that land with the community, you know, because I think that could be a very important discussion to hear.
One moment, John. I just want to see if anyone else.
I just have a parliamentary question, which is if this is the inclination of the committee, I don't know if we can put the motion off now that it's been seconded, or does it have to be withdrawn? Does anybody know the answer to that?
Well, I think you can withdraw it. And I'm not necessarily, you know, so I guess our options, either you can withdraw the motion, amend it, or we can vote on it. I think those kind of are options. All right. I'm going to, John has had his hand up for a while. I'm going to let John York say something. If we can just, we're running long tonight, John, so if you can make it brief, that would be great.
I'll make it really brief. I just want to second everything that David said. It was a while ago.
Oh, keep going, John. Keep going.
I'm keeping going. It was a while ago. I won't go over it, and everything that Marlene said. I think if you pulled this project right now without talking, I know you're going to talk to Gray Gables, and that's the right thing to do. I think it would be very irresponsible and out of your authority to pull this project without talking to Gray Gables. I'm out of your authority in a general sense, not to the letter of the law. You need to ask them you need to ask Gray Gables if none of this is ever built beyond phase 1, do you still want phase 1? I think the answer could easily be yes. I think this is not a path to nowhere. And the users of this path aren't people who are going to ride the length of the bike path and ride the extra half mile and turn around. They're going to do that just because they're out to ride the full length of the path. Whatever it is, they're going to ride the full length of the path. But that's not why they're going up down to Stackpole Park. I mean, they're not the ones who need this. And doesn't make any difference to them. The users of this path are going to be people in Gray Gables. Now, I think the best way to demonstrate that rail with trail is not doable is to do this project and spend 10 million on it. Look at the bike paths throughout. Look at the double barrel shared use paths either side of Route 151 for 1 mile, 1.13 miles at 23 million. And they're building it and it's going ahead. And the towns around there aren't shy about asking for that state money. Look at what they're doing in Sandwich to connect to the canal, the other end of the canal path up to what eventually will get you onto the Cape Rail Trail and all of that. They're spending close to 10 million a mile to wind it through downtown Sandwich. And they're not afraid to take that money. And if our town is afraid to take that money, everybody else is going to get their bike paths built, and the money we give up is going to go to Harwich or Yarmouth for some project there, and they're going to spend it at the same rate per mile. And that's what bike paths cost. And we need to demonstrate, the best way to prove that it's really stupid to do this is to do 0.6 miles of it at 10 million, because for two reasons. One, we still get a bike path that connects the families in Gray Gables to the canal path. And I'll tell you what my personal stake in this is. I've invested 40 years in the bike path network around the canal. And we're about to have $5 billion potentially spent on that. And we're not going to get what we deserve out of it. The state's already saying there's at least 2 miles of bike paths that they're required to build, that they're going to get exceptions and not build. And we're not going to have those bike paths. And we need to go back and tell the state they need to build those. And if we can show that the village of Gray Gables is in the bike path shed of the canal path, we have a much bigger argument, especially since that's a big population of school kids who do after school sports. And if you pull this, then I'm going to be fish out of water trying to deal with Mass DOT and ask them to build the bike paths they need, because you're taking away a big part of the user shed, the bike path shed that they need to service. So I think our town should spend the 10 million, because there's 30 or 40 million dollars worth of bike paths that if our town sticks its neck out and says, we want those and we're not going to let you have the exceptions, then we'll have $40 million worth of more bike paths in our town. If we don't do that, we won't have them. So I think this is 10 million well spent. And I think that the real people deciding this should be people in Gray Gables. If the amount that has to be taken out of Stackpole Park to them is so difficult and they really don't want it, they'll let us know. But we shouldn't make that decision for them. We shouldn't say, oh, this is going to scare people in Gray Gables, so we're not even going to ask them. So I love the idea of your August 6th meeting. I think it should be done as soon as possible. The big decision point on the bridge stuff is coming up in September. All the decisions are going to be made in the few months starting September, whenever they release their draft EIS for all of us to comment on. That's our last chance to have input, because once they've got their environmental impact statement, they're not going to change the project. And our town is going to have to go to bat to get $40 million worth of bike paths that they're required to put in, that they're going to try not to. And so I think the time is now. I think have a meeting August 6th. The more in-person meetings you can have with the community, the better, as far as I'm concerned. I did talk way long. That's all I want to say. You know where I stand. Thank you.
So just, I'm sorry, I was going to say something. So what I'm looking at is that we do something on August 6th, unless anyone has any thoughts that we try to do it in person. Oh, I know what I was going to say. Because we've been going in this direction for such a long time, and, you know, I've spoken at multiple town meetings asking for funding. I think, you know, we should throw this open to other residents of the town. It's not, I mean, yes, I want to hear what Gray Gables residents want, but, you know, this is for the entire town. It's not for one neighborhood. It's just happening to start in one neighborhood. And so I think soliciting wider public input is a good idea. And, you know, again, just allowing the committee members to vote as well as our select board representative. So that I would, you know, maybe suggest that we defer action on Ken's motion and that we move forward with a August 6th, you know, information session on phase one. Matt?
Thank you, David. I think that all sounds great. And just from a procedural point of view, I did a little bit of reading in the background there, and a member may request their motion to be withdrawn. The chair may then ask for objections, and if hearing none, the motion may be withdrawn without a vote, is my understanding.
Ken, how do you want to proceed, or you want to withdraw, or do you want to proceed with the vote?
Well, I'm realistic, and it's pretty obvious to me, even without a straw poll, that I would be the only vote in favor of this motion right now. So I think it's probably better for the committee if it isn't just tabled, and I'm not even sure that can be true. So unless Barbara and Matt are about to tell me that they're voting for this motion, I think it makes more sense for me to ask that it be withdrawn, obviously without prejudice, to reintroduce it after this meeting, identical or as revised.
Yeah. Okay. Then I'll consider it withdrawn. Doesn't look like there's any objections. Do I have a motion then to, I mean, I don't know if I need it, but schedule the August 6th information session to communicate the 8.2s? Okay, Barbara makes a motion.
Seconded.
Okay, any discussion? All right.
Is this in person?
Yeah, well, actually, yes, I'd like to try to make it in person. I just don't know what buildings might be available or anything. We'll aim for 6 p.m. in Wednesday in person at a location to be determined. But
sorry, David, are we talking August 6th at 6 p.m.?
Yes. Is there a conflict?
No, and not that I know of. And just for me, because I'll be out of the state, but so we're talking about a meeting with open to the entire town on August 6th at 6 p.m. to discuss phase 1.
Yeah, I mean, what I would anticipate is a public information session similar to the ones we've done, previously.
And as Marlene suggested, that there would be discussion not just of the changes to the design, but with a clear discussion of the possibility that this is it, and they'll never see any more of this trail.
Yeah. Well, I suspect this meeting will be, our discussion tonight is going to get some press coverage. So I think people will know.
I don't know. Owen might have been bored by this whole thing.
Oh. He's glad he showed up. I used to do that job. I know he's got a story. Yeah, all right. So I will plan on, August 6th. Honestly, it's the only week in August I can do. So, yeah. And, okay. So, Barbara?
How about the library where you had it last time?
I mean, the high school library?
High school, yeah.
Yeah, we can look at that. Just a question of other meetings going
Okay.
on, okay. So I'm looking at our agenda. We've been going at it a while. There's a couple of things I'm going to move past unless anyone objects. I do want to note that I forwarded everybody 2 emails, copies of emails that John York had sent to DOT people about, his reading that there was more shared use pass as part of the Canal Bridges project required. I was going to talk about that tonight, but given the lengthy discussion, I think we can hold off on that. And John, I would just ask you if you get any response to those emails, if you could share them with me, that would be helpful.
Yes, I will. I went to Dylan Fernandes' forum last night and spoke with Louisa in person afterwards. She said they're not likely to respond to anything until they release the draft EIS. She was claiming there would be some problem with them responding. It would somehow queer the due on the EIS release.
Yep.
I see that in some cases there's very specific process questions I asked that I don't think that could possibly apply to the ones I really want the answers to, but I think we're going to have to wait. But they did announce at that forum that the draft EIS will be released in the first or second week of September. Also, September 9th is the next Bridges Stakeholder Advisory Group meeting. And again, I don't want to put more on your docket, except that I personally don't feel that you can really have significant representation at that meeting unless you meet before the meeting to discuss what might come up at the meeting. And I would love to see you have a meeting separate from the Gray Gables public meeting before September 9th, which is the next Bridges Forum meeting.
Well, we'll keep that in mind. So is there any, I'm going to wrap this up unless there's anyone else who wants to make any additional comment, questions. It was an interesting meeting, but I kind of sensed that would be the fact. All right, well, I'm going to accept the motion to adjourn.
David, do we have a next meeting for this committee?
Well, it would be the August 6th meeting. Honestly, after that, I don't know. I am going to be out of the country from August 10th to the 26th. And we'll, not to say somebody can't serve as chair, I'd be fine with that, but those 2 weeks are a no-go for me.
Right, I'm only asking because if the advertising date is coming up, and we have this meeting and the town of Bourne comes out and says, no, we don't want this, then we won't have the chance to have a meeting to give our advice to Marlene before the publication date. I mean, look, if there's no possibility that any member of the committee other than me thinks we're going to recommend that the town communicate that we're not interested in this, even if, say, the people at the meeting say, yeah, we don't want this either, then it doesn't matter. But if they do say we don't want this either, and we want to make that recommendation to the town administrator in time for her to communicate it before the publication date, which seems like a pretty important moment in time, then we need to get together again after that meeting or make that decision that night.
Well, I was going to say, I think we should plan on discussing it that night. After the presentation. So I'm going to include it as, I'll post it as a committee meeting, and include discussion of phase 1. So I think that's my options are limited in terms of my schedule. So I think that's, I don't have to run the meeting, but if I'm going to be there, that's maybe my only option.
Okay, that seems fine. Yep.
Can I ask a question?
Yep.
Ken, are you able to participate remotely on August 6th? I know you're out of town, but will
Yes.
you be? Okay, so you'll be able to be at it, so we can do a hybrid meeting that you can attend.
Yeah, that would be good. Yeah, I mean, I'm all for having people there in person, but if I'm going to attend, I'll have to be online.
So we'll make sure that when we find a spot, we'll make sure we can find a spot that accommodates a hybrid meeting.
Thank you, Marlene. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to end the meeting.
Okay, Barbara, second. I'll make, I don't know, I guess I'll make the second. Do a roll call vote. Matt,
Yes.
Barbara,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
and I'll also vote yes. All right, everybody. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.